позапрошлом году туго было. Когда мы объявили, чуть ли не чрезвычайную ситуацию, главой республики принято решение там назначить премии для волчатников. В позапрошлом году 100 с лишним, прямо одновременно,
Осторожный, очень хитрый, в общем, чуткий очень. Я охотой начал заниматься 1978 года. Отец на охоту меня не брал, говорил, в город уезжай, но все равно меня тянуло. Сейчас уже до такой степени втянулся. Уже не могу без охоты, без леса, без природы. И республиканские власти помогают. Эту премию я получил как за наибольший, как
ဝဲတွားသစ္စာရဲ့အသားစားရဲ့ပိုကောင်းတယ်ကျွန်တော်ပုံမှာအသားထိုက်ပေါ့နော်နေအဲ့ဒီအတွက်အဒီကတော့ထားတယ်
这是for real you can take this video 这个是什么
破骨
破骨老虎啊
啊，破骨，
这个多少
611斤肉，
14,000 yuan wow 14,000 yuan
哦，
贵的哦要用什么吃的啊
这个用是风湿，
不是
哦，风湿脚干，这个这些痛就好久吃，
哦
好得很。
Mongla is well known by people as a place where anything goes, where you can get anything. It's a lawless place, basically annexed by China, which enables a lot of illicit activity to happen. It's located within Special Region 4. The Special Region 4 is administered by a number of different armed groups. There's a constant flow of Chinese tourists, people coming into Mongla for cheap drinks, for drugs and prostitutes and wildlife.
这个是 talking with me
这个对吧？
what are these made from these 犀牛 so from the 这个嘛犀牛 from this one 这个是真的
是真的象牙雕的。
这个都是
那一堆啊，那一堆要是几千大的。
啊这个是什么
老虎给它那个公司啊，增强免疫力啊，就可以强心健体。
So it's like Red Bull, or
这个像那个牛那什么是像那个力气有力气
有力气。
抽
小马粉啊，
走那个里面的哦有是有的啊人家用什么
那上面有说明书的，青光明目，对眼睛有问题、肝脏有问题就可以。
哦这个是做这里啊从中国来啊这个
小孟加拉地区的。
小蒙拉的in 蒙拉
ဝဲဝင်ရတော့တော့မှရတဲ့မြအကုန်လုံးဟိုရောက်သွားတာပဲငါတို့ကတော့ဟိုအတဲချေပဲအတိကခြေတော့ပြုတ်မယ်လက်ပြုတ်မယ်ပေါ့နော်တဲချေချက်တော့တေးတိုးနှလုံးဘာနော်အတဲအကုန်လုံးကြည့်တယ်ဆိုပြီးတော့တောက်ရတယ်
Bears are trafficked mainly for bear bile. Bears are caged in battery-type farms where bile is extracted from their gallbladders. And bears are kept in captivity for their entire life.
Jadi di mana tak tahu ni, tahun-tahun saya kaya pada di mana, ame mulai pun ya, juga tahun yang kupu ya, uyan tu mah, tahun tahun yang kupu ya. 然後保溫靜嘅嘢，嗱啲嘢，你係諗翻保溫靜嘅嘢，點話？唔係呢隻你保溫靜嘅，係周圍保溫靜嚟㗎，嗱多嚟唔數嚟輸過嚟。Makin dia, white pig, makin dia, maiton. Black beer, beer. ဒီမှာအမဲလိုက်တဲ့ဟွာပေါ့နော်ဒီအမဲလိုက်တဲ့ဟာတွေပါရှိလားအခုလောလောဆယ်အရင်ကတော့ရှိခဲ့တာနော်
ဝင်းထောင်နာရီတော့ရှိတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့ဒီတော့ဆယ်မိုင်နဲ့အုပ်တိုးတော့
အဲ့ဒါတွေဟာခင်ဗျားတို့ဒီခါလေးတီးလို့ရှင်ခင်ဗျားတို့တင်းပူစားပါရောက်ဟောပေါ့နော်ဒီခင်ဗျားတို့လည်းတိတ်ကုန်ပေါ့ကွာပြောတာပြောတာတာမြည်ဒါမီတော့မပေါ်ရဘူးပေါ့ကွယ်နာမီတော့မပေါ်စရာဘူးဒါတော့ခင်ဗျားတို့တင်းပေးတဲ့လူကြဘယ်တော့မှကျွန်တော်တို့ဖော်ရုပ်ထုံးစံလည်းမရှိဘူးစရောနာဝတော့မျိုးတော့ဥယျာဉ်ဟာဤရအကျယ်ဝန်းကတော့295တမ5စီရမယ်ရှိပါတယ်အကျယ်ဝန်းအဖြစ်ဧကအဖြစ်ကတော့3,600ဧကရှိပါတယ်အမေရိကရောက်ရှိတာပေါ့ကျွန်တော်ကလည်းတန်းနေဆိုတော့ကျွန်တော်ထိန်းနေပါတယ်ထိန်းနေကြတဲ့မှာဝန်ထမ်းအေးအနေနဲ့မျိုးကြောင့်ဥယျာဉ်ကကျေပြတ်တဲ့ခါကျတော့ကျွန်တော်ထိန်းရောက်ကတော့ကျွန်တော်ဟိုထိန်းနေလို့ပါနည်းနည်းအားလည်းချစ်တယ်ရှိတာပေါ့ကျွန်တော်ကထိန်းအဲ့ဒီအမေရိကရောက်ထိန်းတယ်ဆိုတော့ကျွန်တော်တို့ထိန်းတော့ထိန်းပါတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့ကျွန်တော်တို့ကတော့ဟိုပြောတဲ့ချိန်ပြန်ပြီးခါကြတော့ကျွန်တော်တောတဲ့ချိန်ကျတော့ဟုတ်ကဲ့ဆိုတော့ဟိုနားလည်ကြတာပေါ့ဗျာကျွန်တော်ကြံတော့ပြန်တော့တဲ့ခါကျတော့သူကလည်းစားဝတ်နေအဆင်ပြေခါကျတော့သူကအငတ်တော်မနေနိုင်ဘူးအငတ်မနေခါကျသူကဆိုဖြစ်တဲ့နေရာသူကတော့အနိုင်လိုက်ကြတော့ရှိတာပေါ့အဲ့ဒါမျိုးရှိတယ်
တော့မဟုတ်လားကျွန်တော်ခုံရဲနေထားခုံနေဂုံနေအောင်နေကြတော့ကြီးခုံကြုံကြီးတော့ဝဲကောင်ကျူပြီးကောင်းမှာကြီးအီအောင်မတူဘူးထားခိဝေဘောပြီးချိုးမှာ
They sell a boar for? How much is that worth?
economy ဒီကမှာ
那么个靠网络干嘛被搞个种个种，我在那其他么小包了个那就，那个还有个东猫也有吧，那开的比哈。
The road to extraordinary isn't easy. And it isn't short. But if you keep going, the rewards will come. Invest in consistency. M&G Investments.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, you'd think the season was changing, wouldn't you? But there's not that many signs of it. Yes, it's raining on the Pacific coast of Chile, and there are huge thunderstorms once again in Uruguay, and if you're lucky, some parts of northern Argentina. But we've seen them throughout the summer, and they're right into the autumn as well. North of that, it's warming up again. Our sun is at 37. There are still showers in the southeast of Brazil. But the wettest weather isn't to be found down here. It's been found up in Colombia, possibly in the forecast Ecuador once more. There's been flooding in this western side of Colombia, and this would suggest we might see a repeat performance, but somewhere else. In the Caribbean, the trade winds aren't that strong, but there are plenty of showers, even some heavy showers, I think, in the Lesser Antilles by the end of Saturday. Scattered around, though, for the land bridge between South and North America. North America still in the grips of winter temperature-wise for many places. In fact, looked at Houston, only 9 degrees. But the sun is now starting to get quite strong, and it is playing its part. The forecast for Houston is a battle between that cold wind and the sunshine on Sunday. The sunshine wind, and you're up to 18 by the time we get to Monday. However, there is very obviously winter coming in from the Pacific still. It's affecting Western Canada quite a lot, but it's also coming across the border, either wet or snowy weather.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
This is Al Jazeera.
Hello, I'm Hazem Seeker. This is the News Hour live from Doha. Coming up in the next 60 minutes. Fighting reaches the streets of the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, as Russia continues its military advance. Thousands of Ukrainians flee across the border by any means possible, with the Russian attack intensifying. In a new Zelensky says the Ukrainian army has managed to derail the Russian advance and won't surrender.
Stop filming.
Tense moments as Al Jazeera's team is detained and then released by Ukrainian soldiers in the southeast. Russian troops are closing in on the capital Kiev as part of their land, sea and air invasion of Ukraine. But the president, Volodymyr Zelensky, says his forces remain in control of the capital after a series of explosions and gun battles overnight. An apartment building has come under attack. in the neighborhood of Sikorsky. Civilians pulled from the rubble there. The mayor of Kiev has extended a curfew in the city. He says any civilians in the street between 5 p.m. and 8 a.m. will be considered the enemy. Alexei O'Brien begins our coverage now.
Early morning on Saturday, and a missile slams into a residential building in the Ukrainian capital. The moment captured from inside the building on a security camera. A gaping hole left in the building's side as Russian forces attacked Kiev from the north, east and south. Emergency workers arrived to rescue those inside.
We managed to escape. We were in the kitchen. We were lucky. It was a direct hit into the living room. My wife and elder child broke their legs. The younger child was taken somewhere by the rescuers. I'm looking for him now.
The attack followed fierce fighting in the capital overnight. People watched from their homes as battles raged on the streets outside. People have been urged to take shelter, though it's not clear where and the city is safe. Russia has said it's only targeting military infrastructure. The Ukrainian officials are accusing Moscow of hitting civilian areas. A convoy of Russian trucks has been seen rolling into Ukraine, but the President, Volodymyr Zelensky, is said to have refused an American offer to evacuate, insisting he will stay and fight.
Good morning, Ukrainians. There has been a lot of fake information online saying that I'm calling on our army to lay down arms and to evacuate. Listen, I am here. We will not lay down any weapons. We will defend our state, because our weapon is our truth. And the truth is that this is our land, our country, and our children. And we will defend all of that. That's all I wanted to tell you.
A man in southern Ukraine has been filmed standing in front of the Russian military. On Friday, President Zelensky asked Europeans with combat experience to take up arms to defend his country, accusing the West of being too slow to help. Tens of thousands of people are crossing into neighbouring countries in search of safety. To Romania, they cross by barge, while the line of vehicles waiting to enter Poland is set to stretch 15 kilometres. The UN says at least 120,000 people have fled Ukraine in the past 48 hours, and that number's increasing by the minute. Meanwhile, more Russian troops are heading towards Ukraine, and there are warnings, including from French President Emmanuel Macron, of a long war ahead. Alexei O'Brien, Al Jazeera.
Well, Charles Stratford has the latest now from Dnipro in eastern Ukraine.
We've just left the town of Zaporizhia, which is further south from Dnipro. It's an area that we travelled through to Dnipro yesterday. We saw a lot of military gathering in that area because of what we understand was, at the time, a retreat of Ukrainian forces from the town of Melitopol, which the Ukrainians yesterday said had fallen into Russian hands. The situation in Zaporizhia is very tense indeed, as made indicative of by an experience that we had. Our team, we were getting ready to go live, getting ready to report on the situation in the town, and we'd stopped the vehicle. We were ready with our cameras, and out of nowhere appeared Ukrainian military, Ukrainian police with their guns pointing toward us, some of them firing in the air. We were made to obviously hit the ground, and our cameraman's telephone was kicked out of his hand and was shot. It's obviously not many journalists like becoming part of the story. That's not why we're here. We're here obviously to tell the story of this incredible crisis that is unfolding. But I think this is an indication of just how tense the situation is here, of just how nervous the Ukrainian forces are. Let's show you some video of exactly, or some of what happened. Hi, Doha. Hey. Stop filming.
Журналіст, можна я вийду? Журналіст. Вийти можна? Журналіст. Откройте дверь, пожалуйста. Что делаете?
Very fraught situation there in Zaporizhia. The police eventually told us that they thought that we were potentially saboteurs. There is a video that has been shot by somebody that is being circulated online now, and you can hear the person in the car from where they're shooting this video saying, look, Chechen saboteurs. So as I say, a graphic and frightening indication of just how tense the situation is. Earlier, as we tried to get into the city of Zaporizhia, we were held up at a checkpoint for a long time. And it was whilst we were at this checkpoint that a Russian helicopter appeared from our left, buzzing the checkpoint. The security guards ran for cover, and basically cars scattered as well. Again, it's an indication of just how fluid these front lines are. There seems to be pushes from various directions by the Russian forces, the Ukrainians claiming that they are keeping them back. We understand, having spoken to military in Zaporizhia earlier, they say that they estimate Russian forces are only around about 35 kilometers from the city, an effort to push north further towards Dnipro, and then obviously further towards the capital, Kiev. Zaporizhia is hugely important. It has some incredibly important infrastructure in it. For example, a massive hydroelectric dam, which is of huge significance, of course, for the production of electricity. But yes, the situation is tense there, as you saw in that video and our experience. Also, I should mention, as we were waiting at that checkpoint, there was an almighty large explosion. We estimate around 2.5 kilometers away from where we were. We initially thought it was an airstrike, but have subsequently found out from the military, they claiming that it was some sort of anti-missile system that had hit a Russian missile coming in across or even into Zaporizhia, and it was that missile that was falling to the ground that we saw. In other news, in other areas, we've also been speaking to people in the last 10 minutes or so, a couple of men who have come into Zaporizhia on their way to Dnipro, coming from the area north of Crimea, in and around Kherson, the city of Kherson. They were telling us that there had been a huge push by Russian forces into civilian areas in that area north of Crimea, and initially, so they claim, the Russians had been behaving professionally. They had been avoiding, obviously aggravating civilians and hitting civilian targets. These men were saying the atmosphere had changed dramatically down there. Now, in their words, they said that the Russians were preventing areas from getting water resources potentially and electricity. In their words, using civilians as human shields, effectively. Now, of course, we can't compare. We in no way can confirm that, but an indication of just how fraught things are north of Crimea. Also, in the last 10-15 minutes, I've been speaking to a contact in the town of Mariupol, a town that we were in only yesterday. He's saying that there has been heavy shelling there today as well, and he's describing what he says are increasingly evidence of paramilitaries on the streets of Mariupol. When we were in Mariupol, there was no indication of that, no indication of paramilitaries or the military really on the streets in any heavy numbers. But he's describing men, some of them in plain clothes, carrying weapons, some of them in uniform, an indication of things getting worse in Mariupol also. We also know that there was a tank convoy, Russian tanks heading west into Mariupol. That was something that we narrowly avoided yesterday. There are also reports of an amphibious landing of Russian troops relatively close to Mariupol, to the west of it as well. Possibly an indication again of another push to Mariupol and further north also. So, as I say, there's lots of moving parts to this offensive at the moment. The front lines are becoming increasingly blurred and increasingly difficult to navigate, and of course that has huge implications for potentially hundreds of thousands of civilians trapped in this unfolding war zone.
We've got correspondents covering this from all the angles right now. Rosalind Jordan is standing by in the US capital, Washington, D.C. Bernard Smith is in Moscow. But first, we'll cross line to our diplomatic editor, James Bays, in Brussels. So, James, we're hearing that France has seized this Russian ship in the English Channel. What more can you tell us about that?
This is sanctions in action. This is a Russian ship that was on its way, we believe, carrying cars, that was going through the English Channel. It was stopped by the French authorities, the French maritime authorities. They've escorted the vessel to Boulogne in northeast France, where it's being searched and its crew are being interviewed. It's a ship that's flying a Russian flag, and we believe is owned by an associate of President Putin, who is on the sanctions list. This, I think, in normal times, an interdiction operation of this type is not something that the authorities would make much of a fuss about. They might not even make it public, but clearly the French authorities right now are trying to show that those sanctions, and we've seen 3 rounds of sanctions in recent days here in Europe, are now being enforced by the countries of the European Union. They are all individually obliged to enforce those sanctions, and I think France making it very clear that it is enforcing those sanctions, sending a clear message to Vladimir Putin. We're told already that the French embassy in Paris has protested this action.
James, what other international reaction has there been to what's been unfolding in Ukraine over the last few hours?
Well, there have been some other developments and some other meetings. Clearly, I think the international position is pretty solid now regarding where I am, the EU, NATO and the US. And I think you also got some idea of the international position at the UN Security Council, where you saw the position of China, which I think is very important, abstaining on that Security Council resolution. Clearly, the resolution condemning Russia didn't pass because it was vetoed by Russia. But China, which is increasingly a close ally of Russia, the fact that they abstained, I think, is an interesting fact. Meetings are continuing all across the world and will continue over the weekend. It's not a normal weekend. Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, is currently meeting the Polish Prime Minister and the Lithuanian President. Lots of meetings going on, particularly, I think, meetings on what to do going forward with regard to support for Ukraine. They put the sanctions in place to punish President Putin. What do they do to actually help the Ukrainian military? They're not going to send any resources or any troops. They know that's the case. None of their weapons, none of their aircraft, none of their troops will be used. But can they send weapons in support of the Ukrainians? Can they give other support to the Ukrainians, financial support? That has happened from some European countries. It's happened from the US. I think others are discussing it and discussing what moves they can make.
James Bayes live for us there in Brussels. Thanks, James. Let's cross to Moscow now, where Bernard Smith is standing by for us. So, Bernard, what is Russia saying regarding the possibility of direct talks between Russia and Ukraine right now?
In the last half hour or so, Hazem, Russia state news agency is reporting that on Friday, yesterday, Vladimir Putin ordered a halt to the invasion of Ukraine because he thought that Ukraine was going to sit down for talks. And then they said that as Ukraine rejected those talks, Russia resumed what it called the operation. Now, we know that on Friday, we know that before, in the last few days, Vladimir Zelensky has been calling for talks with the Russians, and the Russians on Friday said they were prepared to have these talks in Minsk. Ukraine said they wanted to have them in Warsaw, and then Russia says the line with Ukraine went quiet and they've not heard anything since. But Russia saying it was ready for them. Now, we were hearing also on Friday that there might be more progress on any indication of talks today. But remember, we don't really know what the conditions are, but we do know that Vladimir Putin has been calling for the overthrow of Vladimir Zelensky's government by the Ukrainian army, and we do know that Vladimir Putin is not prepared, does not want Vladimir Zelensky there as the president of Ukraine. So who it is that the Russians would be happy to talk to, they haven't made clear.
And Bernard, as far as the latest on how Russia's reacting to the sanctions that have been placed on it and its increasing isolation in the world, what are we hearing on that?
Well, you have both now, the physical as well as practical and political isolation of Russia really beginning to take shape. And in response, Russia's the deputy head of the Russia Security Council, the former president Dmitry Medvedev, he sort of shrugged off sanctions. He said it gives us a good reason to pull out of talks on strategic nuclear stability, he says, and potentially from the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, the START Treaty that was signed in 2010 and extended to 2021. And Medvedev also calls it really unfair, a decision by the Council of Europe to suspend Russia's membership. And he says that's a good reason for us to slam the door on the organisation and reintroduce, restore the death penalty for serious crimes. If you're a member of the Council of Europe, you are not allowed to have the death penalty. Well, Medvedev says this gives us an opportunity to restore it. And Russia has banned from its airspace Poland, Bulgaria and the Czech Republic. That's in addition to other European airlines that have banned Russia and so have been reciprocally been banned too. So you see this isolation of Russia really beginning to take shape.
Bernard, thank you. Bernard Smith, live for us in Moscow. Let's turn to Washington now, where Rosalind Jordan is standing by for us. So Rosalind, there were some reports in the U.S. media about the Ukrainian president being offered sanctuary and a chance to evacuate Ukraine, but he turned it down. What more are we hearing on that? To Washington now, where
well, that has not been confirmed. This question has come up several times to U.S. officials this week, and the most that they will say is that they are consulting with President Zelensky and with his leadership team about security issues, but they're more focused on helping the Ukrainian government defend itself from the Russian invasion. And in fact, in the last half hour or so, we have an official statement from the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, indicating that using an authority given to him by the President Joe Biden, he has authorized the dispersal of another $350 million in security assistance to Kiev in order to help them defend their country from Russian troops. Now, this is something that ostensibly would mean trying to get equipment into the country, but given that there are Russian military incursions for almost all sides of Ukraine's borders, this is going to be a difficult task, but the U.S. government is adamant that it is going to provide the Ukrainians the assistance that they need to defend their country.
Rosalind, thanks for that. Rosalind Jordan, live for us in Washington. Well, joining us now via Skype from Lviv is Michael Borsirkiw, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and the former spokesman for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Good to talk to you again. So I want to ask you, first of all, because you're talking to us from Lviv in western Ukraine, just talk us through the situation there right now and what's been happening there over the last few hours.
Sure. Well, it's pretty calm here, but I got to say, this morning at around 6 a.m., we were all awoken again by those air raid sirens and announcements to shelter in place. And I think we've had at least 2 or 3 more today. The other thing we're all seeing happening here is a visible, much more visible anxiety, I think. You're seeing people arriving from the east, staying here for a little bit, and perhaps moving on to Poland and other countries. What your previous correspondent, I believe in Zaporizhzhia, was saying is that there's a lot of anxiety in terms of saboteurs or people that are pro-Russian and helping them out. And we're seeing that play out here too, actually. Police stopping people, perhaps taking them away. A lot more anxiety because of that. And then, of course, a couple of hours drive, maybe 2 or 3 hours drive from here is the Polish border. We're hearing of massively long lineups for people to cross the border. So a number of things playing out. But I need to emphasize one thing, if I can, is that once, I mean, God forbid, of course, Mr. Putin is able to take over Kyiv, but the fear here, there's a legitimate fear. Lviv being the kind of intellectual, patriotic, cultural tourism center of Ukraine, a lot of leaders came from here, a lot of intellectuals. The patriotism here is, I can say, palpable, is there's a fear that they may turn their attention towards Lviv, towards this region, and we won't be spared. We won't be spared either. The calm could end relatively quickly.
Just going back to Kiev for a moment, and you mentioned there so many Ukrainians streaming into the Polish border. Our correspondent there, he spoke to a number of Ukrainians who felt that it was just a matter of time before Kiev would fall to the Russians. If that were to happen, what do you think is President Putin's ultimate goal here? Is he trying to take out the Zelensky government and perhaps replace it with a government that is more compliant to him?
Yeah, well, 2 things there. Yeah, undoubtedly, he wants to install a puppet regime compliant to Moscow, like they have in Belarus. And I even heard from one former senior Western diplomat that could be in the form of Viktor Yanukovych, who you remember 8 years ago was toppled in a popular uprising here. So there's real concern that that may happen. But the other thing is that a lot of Ukrainians actually do want to stay within the country. But if the conflict, if the violence moves here, I am telling you, Europe is going to have a refugee crisis, migrant crisis, which it hasn't seen since the Second World War. We're hearing estimates upwards of 5 million people possibly going across. And I can tell you firsthand, I mean, I was receiving calls from Ukrainian friends who were in Warsaw, landed there, usually well-resourced, but all the hotels are full. The Ukrainian currency can't be changed easily. Credit cards aren't working. It's really, really important that the international community mobilize quickly to help those types of people, because I fear that there's going to be a massive wave coming that way.
And short of any boots on the ground coming to the rescue in Kiev, and NATO has made that clear that is not going to happen. Where does that leave President Zelensky as far as options in his attempts to defend his country?
Yeah, well, his desperation, and understandable desperation, is showing more and more. Look, your Washington correspondent was talking. I was thinking, you know, it's great that Western countries are stepping up and providing that lethal aid. But you know what? That should have happened weeks ago while, for example, the airports were still functioning. To send it now is important, but I think that connects to another part of the Putin strategy, is to isolate Ukraine, to surround it, and then it will be very difficult to get those kind of resupplies in here. It's a huge concern that that's part of the Russian strategy, is to cut off, to isolate Ukraine. But they do need the weapons, they do need the money, but again, it's coming very, very late, and it's going to be difficult, I'm afraid, to absorb it into the kind of front lines and the operational lines.
Good to talk to you, Michael Brasiricu, there in Lviv. Thank you.
That's part of the Russians' pleasure.
The UN Security Council failed to adopt a resolution condemning the Russian military action in Ukraine. Russia vetoed the vote that would have confirmed the sovereignty of Ukraine and demanded Russia immediately withdraw its forces. Shihab Ratansi reports.
As president of the Security Council, it fell to Russia to list the UN member states who co-sponsored a resolution opposing its use of force against Ukraine and calling for an unconditional withdrawal.
Botswana, Венгрии, Guatemala.
The resolution did gain the support of 11 members of the Council, with China, India and the United Arab Emirates abstaining. As expected, Russia used its veto power.
Russia, you can veto this resolution, but you cannot veto our voices. You cannot veto the truth. You cannot veto our principles. You cannot veto the Ukrainian people.
The Russian ambassador countered that the resolution was imbalanced for not mentioning the shelling of Donbass by the Ukrainian government, nor the failure by Kiev and the West to implement the 2015 peace deal. And he added this.
Нам, конечно, трудно тягаться с Соединенными Штатами.
I will refrain from listing out the aggressions carried out by the United States in their history, but you are in no position to moralize.
The US succeeded in avoiding a Chinese veto with its final version of the resolution, but Beijing once again agreed with Russia that the crisis had developed over time as the result of NATO's disregard for Russia's security and cautioned the Security Council.
Any action should be truly conducive to diffusing the crisis, rather than adding fuel to the fire.
The Ukrainian ambassador accused his Russian counterpart of having no idea what was in Vladimir Putin's mind, but he did reaffirm Ukraine's commitment to negotiations, even as he despaired for the safety of his people.
And I will ask
Any action should be truly conducive to diffusing the
all of
crisis,
you
rather than adding fuel to the fire.
to pray or to meditate if you do not believe in God, for peace.
It's expected that a similar but non-binding resolution will be introduced at a special session of the United Nations General Assembly, where Russia does not have the veto. And already it appears to have the support of more than 80 of the UN's 193 member states. Shihab Ratansi, Al Jazeera, the United Nations.
All right, still ahead on Al Jazeera. Protests around the world in support of the people of Ukraine. And why bread could become a rarity. Global wheat prices surge over the Russia-Ukraine war.
Qatar, one of the fastest growing nations in the world. Wani Qatar needed to open and develop its ports to attract international shipping companies, to become a key Middle Eastern hub for trade and commerce. Muani skillfully mapped out 3 key areas of development, fulfilling a promise of connecting the world, connecting the future. Wani Qatar, Qatar's gateway to world trade.
Romania's ancient forests, some of Europe's most pristine.
They're crucial for our society and crucial for our battle against the climate crisis.
But illegal logging by a ruthless timber mafia is destroying both the landscape and people's lives.
Logging in Romania is our drug traffic. Gangs, violence, killing whistleblowers.
Amidst claims of corruption and the role of powerful multinationals, People and Power investigates Romania, Rape of the Forest on Al Jazeera.
Hello again, you're watching Al Jazeera. A reminder of our top stories. Explosions have been heard in parts of Kiev as Russian forces continue their assault. An apartment building came under attack Kiev's mayor says 35 people, including children, were injured in the missile strike. The curfew has been extended, and anyone seen on the streets at night will be deemed an enemy combatant. Another large convoy of Russian trucks has crossed the border into Ukraine. Moscow is sending more supplies as the fighting continues. Ukraine's president says his government is still in charge of Kiev and key points around it. Volodymyr Zelensky says Kiev has derailed Russia's attack. He's urged Russians to pressure President Vladimir Putin to abandon his war plans. Now, Poland's Interior Ministry says 100,000 Ukrainians have poured into the country since the Russian assault began. Many have been taking temporary shelter in halls and train stations. Zane Basravi joins us from eastern Poland, where Ukrainians are crossing the border. So, Zane, tell us what's happening there.
Well, Hazem, we're here at the Przemyśl train station. It is just across the border from Ukraine. People from Ukraine are arriving here by train from the town of Lviv, and it's been coming in waves. Now is another busy period. Let me give you a sense of what's happening around us. Here in this hall, we have people that have arrived that are being registered. Now, they're not being registered as refugees. These are people who are being registered for transport out of this area into other parts of Europe. The government is helping to get people to friends and to family, helping to relocate them, finding them temporary housing. But the government, the officials aren't the only ones here that are doing that kind of work. We've seen volunteers with signs made out of cardboard offering people a free place to stay, free rides into Poland and further across Europe, including Berlin and Prague and Denmark. So really, here it gives you a sense that what's happening here is touching every European country in some way. Now, from this busy part of the train station, we're going to go to another hallway where people are getting some much-needed rest. Now, in the main hall, people are enjoying probably their first hot meal in days. And here in a quieter part of the train station, there is a makeshift shelter where people can get some sleep, get some rest, and get some reprieve from what has no doubt been an incredibly arduous journey to try to cross from Ukraine into Poland, into safer parts of Europe. We've spoken to people here who say that they've left family members behind, young mothers with families who've been forced to say farewell to their husbands, knowing that it might be for the last time. Men of fighting age from 18 to 60, many being stopped since the fighting in Ukraine began, since the Russian invasion, conscripted into the Ukrainian armed forces to try to hold the country, hold the capital, and hold on to main cities. Now, Kiev is still under attack, and so the Polish government is expecting that is going to continue to push people further west and further from Lviv and onwards into Poland. So we're expecting a lot more people, estimated between 1 to 5 million people are expected to travel from Ukraine into Poland and then further on to Europe in the coming days. The people that have been displaced talking to us are angry. There's a great deal of anger, shock, frustration, but there are still some people that are actually going back. Thousands of people have already crossed back into Ukraine to try to help their family members. Many people we spoke to say that their elderly relatives have decided to stay back in the only home they now know. We've also heard, we spoke to one man who said his wife is a soldier. He's dropping his kids off in the Netherlands, and then he intends to go back and join the fight and continue to try to defend his country from this Russian invasion.
Thanks very much, Zane Basravi, reporting to us there from Poland near the border with Ukraine. Chris Meltzer is a senior spokesman for the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. He joins us now via Skype from Dohorusk on the Poland-Ukraine border. Thanks very much for being with us. So tell us, first of all, the extent of the refugee challenge from where you are. How many people are coming through? Are you expecting to come through? And what is their greatest need right now?
We're talking about thousands of people. So in the first 48 hours, about 75,000 people from the Ukraine have arrived in Poland alone. And here at that part of the border, there are, like in the other parts also, long lines of cars from the Ukraine. Sometimes the people, they told us they are waiting for 24 hours or even a little more. They are sad, they are frightened, but they are also kind of relieved because right now they think they are safe and they are happy that they can go to Poland.
And obviously, the UNHCR will be calling for more help as this continues, and as you inevitably expect more refugees to come through.
Yes, so right now we have the situation that about 130,000 Ukrainians have left their country, but there are, of course, much more people inside of the Ukraine displaced. We indeed expect a higher number, but we see also a lot of solidarity here in Poland, but also in Romania, in Slovakia, in Moldova, that the governments and also the people itself, they open up, they help, and the signs of solidarity are really touching.
And talk to us a little bit about what people there have been saying, if you've been able to talk to them. Obviously, they've been through, a horrendous experience, many of them, I'm sure, at this point.
Yes, indeed. So they are sometimes for 48 hours and more here on the flight, and they are mainly women and children, not that many men within the refugees. And they told us that they are now that they hope to find safety here in Poland, and they left family members behind, and sometimes really heartbreaking stories from people who are in need.
All right, appreciate you talking to us. Thanks very much for your time there, Chris. Thank you very much. Kiev's mayor is Vitaly Klitschko. He had this update about what's been happening on the ground.
The night was hard, but there are no Russian troops in the capital. The enemy is trying to get into the city. A residential building was hit by a missile. Emergency services are going there now. Military police, National Guards, volunteers, and territorial defense are protecting our city. We are setting checkpoints in the capital, so movement around the city will be limited. All critical infrastructure is working. Public transport is working to transport workers of the critical infrastructure of the city. The metro is working, except for the Red Line, but the stations are available to shelter people.
Well, earlier, our correspondent Andrew Simmons heard shelling in the capital, Kiev. He was forced to take cover while reporting live on air. He was telling us about the latest accusations against Russia's military.
The claims are from the military that Russia is indeed targeting some civilian areas, not massive amounts of civilian areas, but certainly relevant to the point whereby buildings like the one you saw, which was an example, but by no means the worst. There has been a lot of targeting near civilian areas, but yes, it would appear there has been some targeting of civilian areas. I can't prove one way or the other. As for what people are thinking, they're terrified. They think, well, they're fair game for targeting because that's the situation in many wars. There are examples in Kharkiv, for example, where civilian areas have been really devastated. I've got to take some security advice. Just bear with me a second, please. Just bear with me a second. Yeah, we have to take a move. There's information coming in about something imminent. I'm sorry, we will update you later when it's safe to do so. Thank you.
Oh, Alexander Batursky is a senior Russia analyst. He says President Vladimir Putin will feel the economic consequences of attacking Ukraine.
People already talking that the life would be hard, especially the already hard for economy because of COVID and so on. And some people are actually saying that they are pro-Ukrainians and putting Ukrainian flags, which may be not the good thing because it divides the society. But many Russians, even those who supported Putin, do not justify his actions. I have many friends who are hardline Putinists, and they say this is not a pretext. Even the fighting was in Donbass, even Ukraine has attacked Donbass. You should use other means, diplomacy, UN peacekeepers, but to retaliate, to attack. This will be, you know, Iran-Iraq war. We might actually have something like this. Ukrainian forces are strong. They are knowing the skills of Russians because many Ukrainian officers know the Russian tactics because probably they were the same during the Soviet Union. So some things have changed, but many things are remaining the same. So yes, economic costs would be big because the Western sanctions. But you know what? I talked to a friend of mine, an economist from a very respected school. He said, not only economy, but also moral cost. You also see the football championship is canceled in St. Petersburg. Our famous conductor, Valery Georgiev, a very talented man, but also a staunch Putin supporter, was banned from New York Carnegie Hall. So this is also a moral ground. Musicians would not come. Scientists would not be able to come. Some people on the Weather Focus conference will be denied whatever. Circus artists will not be performing. Russia might tune into something like a North Korea.
Well, Alexei Harin is a political analyst and, excuse me, professor of comparative politics at Kiev Mohyla Academy. He tells us what he's been witnessing on the ground.
It seems that now there are no fights in the streets. During night, Russian paratroopers arrived, and they also sent subversion groups into the Kiev. They tried to do it, but they are destroyed. They're destroyed. So basically what we can, Ukrainian army is defending. They are trying to approach the city, but I believe it's in vain. They try to seize airports around Kiev. No, it doesn't happen. Now about my own experience. Basically, I am all the time